I listened to this.
Oh,
Remember this record?
I'll never forget it. Because that record was my idea.
Tell me about it.
Well, I'll try not to make it too long.
Oh, go ahead. I
Well,
have
no,
time.
Shirley, I still play drums today, basically the way she taught me. I think I've been fortunate. I think I was lucky to play with a pianist and a vocalist because she was both. I mean, she was both a great piano player and a great singer.
Mm.
And sometimes, depending on what attitude I had, sometimes I preferred her as a piano player, and sometimes I preferred her as a vocalist.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, the level was very high. The first time I ever played with professional level musicians, she was in the band. I just didn't know she was there. I was so busy thinking about myself, I didn't even notice who the piano player was, right? It's because I had just heard about the music, just learned about the music. There was a saxophone player named Buck Hill,
Yeah.
and uh, and so he gave me these two records, these two Charlie Parker records. Charlie Parker with strings, it was 78, two 78s. Charlie Parker with strings, which was Just Friends and If I Should Lose You. And
Mm.
this one had Star Eyes and Au Prevoir, right? So it it turned my whole life around, just those two records. Just, that's all I wanted to listen to.
Yeah.
So finally, I figured out that people actually did play that way live. And then when I figured that out, then I wanted to play with them. And then I started going around trying to sit in, and nobody would let me play, because it seemed like a joke. It seemed like this kid is going around saying, "Let me play," and he said, "I guess I look too young to be serious."
Yeah.
So after three or four places wouldn't let me play, I called Buck back and I said, nobody will let me play. So he said, well, you can come down and play with me, because he had a Saturday afternoon gig, a jam session gig.
Yeah.
So that's when I went down and sat in on the gig, and the first couple of tunes was okay, I guess. But then the third tune, uh, I turned the time around. So of course I was heartbroken, that I messed up, and I didn't know any of these guys because they were all much older than me. So, I was really near tears. So when I got off the drums, I was walking away, trying to find somewhere where I could, be quiet or something,
Mm.
and somebody grabbed me by the back of my belt and said, it wasn't all your fault. He said it takes three of us to make a rhythm section, and it turned out that was Shirley Horn.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
that's when I realized that she had been playing the piano.
Hmm. Yeah, you were so focused on
Yeah, yeah.
trying
Oh,
to get it right. Yeah.
yeah, right. So that was the beginning of it, and of course, for me, she was physically beautiful too. So I
Mm.
immediately fell in love with this angel, this jazz angel,
Mm.
and so now I was saving up all my lunch money to go see her gigs. And as it turned out, she always had the best drummers in town. So then that's how I began to learn, see drummers live,
Mm.
and and that was the beginning of it. And then I was playing a lot of pop gigs. Uh, well, I say pop gigs like I was playing with local guys,
Yeah.
and So sh- uh, eventually she came to one of the gigs, and I mean came in, walked in the gig, and said, "Okay, it's time for you to come and play with me."
How much older than you is she?
I
Just
can't
only,
remember now. I mean, I'm sure the age is much closer than I thought, but of course she seemed
yeah,
like an old woman to me then,
sure, sure.
except a beautiful, beautiful old
Hmm.
woman, you know. And so I'm trying to think. She probably wasn't any more than about 7 years older than me, or
Yeah,
something like that, 7 or 8. But so anyway, so I started playing with her,
yeah.
and then and just she, as far as I'm concerned, her style of piano player was basically always a trio, and it was somewhere between, at my age then, it seemed like somewhere between Oscar Peterson and Ahmed Jamal.
Hmm.
But uh, of course, she didn't have the facility of either one of those guys.
Mm.
But the character of both bands, because some people are just into Oscar Peterson, or they're into Oscar Peterson more. They're into Ahmad Jamal. Say
Hmm.
somebody like Benny Green. I mean, he can play like anybody, but you can tell that he's sort of leans more towards Oscar Peterson. Oscar Peterson,
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah.
and then other people lean more towards Ahmad Jamal.
Hmm.
But Shirley had both. So in terms of rhythm section playing, that set me up. So when I finally did move to New York and everything, I was actually more prepared than I thought,
Mm.
because I sort of knew that vocabulary, the comping vocabulary, which ends up being more like Red Garland or something.
Hmm.
You know, whoops. Hmm. Aha. It's my COVID testing is available.
Oh,
All right.
do you
So
want to check it, Billy?
no,
Okay.
I got I got time. They're not
Okay.
in Germany,
Yeah.
so 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 that's the way it was with Shirley. So after I began to play with people. And when I looked up, 10 years had gone by, 20 years had gone by, and I couldn't think of when I got a chance to help somebody. I was recording for Steeplechase Records, and so I've recorded over 100 CDs for Steeplechase Records,
Yeah.
right? So at a certain point, maybe this is about 40 or 50, uh, he was looking for an older style saxophone player, and I suggested Buck Hill.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing three CDs or something, and it was pretty successful, especially since Buck never traveled. He was a postal employee,
Wow, I
right?
didn't know that.
So they made him like of some point of interest, because he is a postman that also plays the saxophone.
Hmm.
So we came over and we did the North Sea Jazz Festival and things like that. So then the guy asked me, I said, "Oh man, if you like Buck, you're really gonna like Shirley."
Yeah.
And he said, "We don't record singers." I said, "Well, you'll record this one, because if you don't, I'm not recording for you anymore."
Wow.
And he said, "Okay." And so that's the record you heard.
Yeah. I love that record.
Me too.
That
You
lazy afternoon version is just incredible.
right? And
What was your how were your memories? How are your memories of the recording session?
well, it was easy to remember it, because uh, you know she didn't want to do it. She basically had retired, except to work locally. but she wasn't traveling or anything anymore. And she was so good that, if she had a gig, it would be 6 nights a week for 3 years. I
Wow.
mean, she was that good. She wasn't famous, but she was that good.
Hmm.
So anyway, so she said, I don't really want to do that. I said, come on, Shirley, come. So, and you can look at the cover and see that she just threw something over her regular clothes for the for the for
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
you
Looks
know
like a sheet or something.
yeah, right. So anyway, I talked her into coming up, and then I had a gig with Jerry Mulligan in Connecticut, and I got stuck in traffic. So when I showed up to the record date in New York, I was an hour late. So, and she said, man, I didn't really want to do this. And you had the nerve to show up late, because she was still like my elder.
Yeah.
And she began to feel sort of like it was sort of disrespectful. And to make matters worse, Buster wasn't there. So I called Buster on the phone. I said, man, what's happening with you? He was throwing a party at his house. He had totally forgotten about the whole thing. So then he had to run down there. So in those days, I mean, and the recording cat, I mean, the steeplechase guy, he didn't want to do it, right? I had to convince him,
Sure, yeah, you
and
talked him
then
into it.
and then convince Shirley, right? And then
Hmm.
so Buster gets there, and both of them are pissed, right? They don't know they're just meeting each other at the date, and Buster is later than me. He gets there 2 hours late. I'm an hour late, and the session is only 6 hours.
Hmm.
Steeplechase isn't the most expensive. They don't spend the most money on a recording. So now we got 4 hours to do a date with three people that don't really know each other. So now Shirley's pissed. So she looks at Buster. Buster looks at her, and he said, "Do you know I'm old fashioned?" He said, "Yeah, I know it." So and now they're like that. And then she didn't even tell him a key. She just stomped it off, and that's
Yep.
what you heard.
Wow.
So you see
Wow.
why I will never forget it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes
And,
sense.
and and it's one of his favorite. It's one of Buster's favorite records, and
Yep.
it's one of my favorite records because you can see. Now I hadn't played with her, I mean, at all in maybe 15 years or something like
Hmm.
that. And you can still see that I remember the way she taught me to play. I mean, it sounds sort of like it had been rehearsed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the way it was. And
Hmm.
that was that, and it was basically 4 hours of first takes or something like that.
She just called the tunes and
Yeah,
then you guys
yeah.
roll. Yeah.
And she didn't even he didn't for the first tune, I'm old fashioned. She didn't even tell Buster the key
That is old fashioned.
because she was pissed.
Yeah. Wow. So did the vibe change throughout the session?
Well, yeah, after that, you know, because I mean, of course, he loved her,
Yeah.
because he'd never met her. He didn't know who she was. That was
Hmm.
all my idea,
Yeah.
and of course, she loved him after that. So the
Yeah.
rest of it was
Yeah. So you again you said the way she taught you to play.
yeah,
You again said it repeatedly. I wanna get into that with you. If you can put a finger on what always comes to mind, because Shirley is one of my biggest idols on the piano,
uh
and just a general as a musician. She plays so slow tempos,
yeah.
and I'm I'm wondering how you when you first started playing with her, because I think that was her thing right from the start, right? To do the songs really really slow sometimes.
Well,
And
yeah, yeah.
how did you deal with that? Because sometimes it feels like there's some recordings where it feels like it's almost like rubato,
Yeah,
slow. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you mean. I mean, not to answer your question right away, but I mean that's how I got interested in playing multi-directional or free or whatever you call that. That was
Mm.
my first, relationship with that way of playing. Even though I didn't play like Rashid with her,
Yeah.
but that's the feeling she had. That's how it felt. It
Mm.
felt like you could do anything in that space of time. Where because we did make a record at one point. Well, this years later, where Elvin was on the record,
Yeah.
and I was on the record. Elvin had a lot of trouble. A
Did you
lot
talk
of
to him?
Well, you could hear it. I was there
Mm.
because we did the record in Shirley's house.
Aha.
But,
Okay.
but she was soulful. She wanted to have a record date in her house where she cooked,
Oh, wow.
right? And that started because of those gigs she would have where she was in the club for 2 and 3 years. So sometimes she would just go there and bring food.
Hmm.
I mean, she got to be like she lived there or something. So and she liked playing like that.
Yeah.
Having the intermission where the band would go back in the dressing room or the cloakroom, whatever, and eat food.
Mm.
You know,
Very casual, huh?
yeah, yeah. So anyway, we did that with Elvin, and so on the takes that Elvin was on, I could see that he was having a problem with that because like we talked about the drummer being the conductor of an ensemble.
Mm.
If anybody wanted to be a conductor, it was Elvin. When you played with Elvin, you played with Elvin,
Sure. Yeah.
right? So and Shirley, you, you had to play with Shirley. I mean,
Yeah.
because on those tempos,
Mm.
and I guess Elvin wasn't there long enough to 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 pick it up to figure it out because I know he could do that because I heard him play with Cecil Taylor not only on the records but live,
Live. Live. Yeah.
right? And to say nothing, of course, Coltrane towards the end period of their relationship,
Mm.
Coltrane was already playing,
Multi-directional.
multi-directional, yeah, right. So I knew that Elvin was having problems, but of course, when I learned how to play like that with her, it's because I was really young, like a child.
Mm.
I didn't think of any other way to do it.
Mm.
I just did what she just played, and I just played. And then as I played with her longer, then I began to feel it. I began to feel what she felt.
Hmm.
Right now, I can describe it academically.
Yeah.
I have an academic uh, opinion of what that is. I can't tell you definitely, but she is similar to other people that play like that. The first person that comes to my mind is Ray Charles,
Mm.
right? And and I think what happens is, well, I'll show you.
Okay.
Uh, Most people, especially now, especially these days, if most people play a ballad, they would think of it in terms of binary, right? But I think Ray Charles and Shirley think of it as tertiary,
Hmm.
right? Like uh, right?
Yeah.
except with brushes, of course.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, surely we would do it with brushes, but Ray Charles would play it like, you know, like, and
Yeah.
but surely we would play it with brushes, and with at a certain experience for a drummer, uh, you know, they both have their own feeling, so
Mm.
you don't have to play it loud or strict to do that. All you have to do is feel that.
Yeah.
You
Because I
just feel.
noticed also then when you play sometimes with her these super slow tempos, you don't sometimes even mark the tempo as such or mark the bar. You just sometimes there's just a curt, curtain, no, a rug of sound,
Yes,
and then
yeah,
is the next note, and
yeah,
still
yeah,
the rug of sound is there,
yeah,
or a cushion or whatever,
yeah.
but
She,
you
she,
feel it.
yeah, she taught me. I mean, that's what I mean. She taught me that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just knew how to do it. I mean, it was like I was singing or I was playing the piano. Was because it wasn't like she was saying, or
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
she
She
was
didn't cue it.
no, just and we were or slow dancing,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Mm.
like that, which had its points. I mean, it can be it could be sensual actually.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know, especially when we started, because I was in love with her.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, so and of course the groove thing, she had Washington D.C. There is a pop style of playing there called go-go. I don't know if you've heard
I heard
go-go.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so she had, that's a Washington D.C. way of doing it.
Hmm.
That's Duke Ellington, uh, Frank West.
Hmm.
That's, that's Grady Tate.
Hmm.
I mean, that's the way. That's a Washington D.C. way of doing things.
Hmm.
And so, the combination of those two things with Shirley, you know,
Mm.
so when you go back and like I said, I hadn't played with her in 15 years at least and I'm old fashioned, and that was the first take, and she just counted it off. She didn't give him a key, and
Yeah.
obviously she didn't give me any tempo. She just counted it off.
Yeah.
She just said, do you know I'm old fashioned? He said, yeah, I know it. She said, then go, okay, one. And she does things that only person I knew would do it would be like Miles. Miles Davis. If he when I would we play opposite Miles sometimes at the Vanguard,
Yeah.
and Miles would count off milestones.
With his foot.
Right. Yeah, but just one hit. He would just say bop 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 bop.
Wow.
You know.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So and Shirley, so she had all of that,
Yeah.
right? So, do you know I'm old fashioned? Yeah, I know it. And she always started everything with a very strong one,
Mm.
right?
It's
And
true. Yeah.
you saw how she counted it off, right? With just triplets, da 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 bop,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That was the count off.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, that,
Did
that's Miles Davis style.
hmm
Hmm.
It's true. Did she in some way talk about things with you musically? Would she
No,
go into detail or never,
I
or it's
mean,
just through playing?
she had other things she would talk about.
Hmm. Sure.
And everything you talk about eventually relates to music, but she
Hmm.
wasn't one of those people that was going to teach me. You know.
I think I asked you about uh, those instances where you played opposite Miles at the Vanguard.
Right.
Would Miles sometimes sit in with you guys?
No, but she sat in with them.
Yeah. So what did they play when she sat in?
Well, any of those standard kinds of things,
Uh-huh.
like because she turned him on to quite a few records. Like
Yeah.
she turned him on to I, I thought about you.
Yeah.
I fall in love too easily.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of those kinds of standards,
Yeah.
right?
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah,
they wound up they were on her records first and then they wind up on Miles' records.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that, but I know that. She would say, "Oh yeah, I showed him that."
Yeah. Yeah. And he started playing ballads really slow during that time.
Right, right, right. Okay, that gives you a thing. Because when I joined the band, Wynton Kelly was the. So, but when we got off doing intermission, or wasn't intermission, because Miles would be playing, but we got off. But I remember walking in the back, and it was the first time I'd ever seen Herbie Hancock, who
Mm.
was just standing in the back of the Vanguard watching Miles. I don't think he had met Miles even at that point,
Uh-huh.
right?
Wow.
So that meant obviously he was checking Winton out,
Hmm.
you
That
know,
makes sense.
yeah.
And Herbie was, I mean, Shirley is also interesting influence for Herbie as well. You know,
It's obvious. Like
totally.
for example, the intro that Herbie plays on "My Funny Valentine,"
Hmm. Big
as
time.
so
Yeah.
Shirley, and that is so Shirley.
Yeah.
I don't even think of it as Herbie.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Did you talk to him about Shirley?
Um, well, not so much, except that obviously he already knew.
Yeah.
You know, uh, you know, because at first a lot of guys thought of me as just a vocalist drummer,
Mm.
that kind of thing. So he didn't want to talk about it too much because he wanted a drummer that was a drummer. Like
Yeah.
he said, "Oh man, you know, I'm not here to you know play some light stuff. Like
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know." And he was more interested actually in my little pop vocabulary at the time.
Uh-huh. Like what?
Well, I told you I played with some pop people,
Hmm.
right? And the same time that Jimmy Smith called me, I mean, the same day that Jimmy Smith called me for the gig, I was in San Francisco with Shirley Horn, and my wife at that time uh, gave Jimmy Smith my hotel number. But the same day, James Brown called me.
Ooh.
And so I said, she just told him, that I wasn't home, that I was in San Francisco.
Wow.
Right. And because she knew that what my choice would be. I mean, I didn't have to think about it. I never have to think about it ever. Because sometimes I talk to students, they say, "Man, you turned down James Brown."
Hmm.
I said, "Not only did I turn him down then, I would turn him down now."
Can you explain?
Well, uh, I don't know about you, but I mean, if somebody called you to play with Justin Bieber and you got a chance to play, you know, if and you had a chance to play with a Jan Gabarek or something, I mean,
Mhm. You felt you weren't the right guy for the job.
I learned the vocabulary. Remember, I said Shirley came and got me out of the pop gig.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it takes a certain amount of knowledge to be able to play pop drumming. I mean, that's no easy thing either.
Hmm.
I mean, and it has its own tradition.
Hmm.
I mean, it has the same tradition of jazz. I mean, it's the same thing.
Mm.
You know, John Coltrane. They asked the powers that be or whoever, interviewers or whatever. They asked John. He said, what are you trying to do with your music? And I guess it was during the time of the revolution or whatever, so-called Afro-American revolution, which is actually beginning to sound like that, back to that today.
Yeah.
And so I guess they expected him to say, I want my music to be, Black Power or something like that. And he didn't say any of that. Uh, he said, I simply want to be a force for good,
Yeah, it's
right?
beautiful. Yeah.
And and it was like, maybe you don't understand what we mean.
Mm.
It was like, so he said, well, well, let's ask you another question. Tell us about classical music. And he said, please forgive me if I'm wrong. Or how did he put it? Please forgive me if I'm, yeah, I think, please forgive me if I'm wrong. He said, but every culture on the planet has a classical music.
Mm.
To which culture are you referring?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So what I took from that is that if every culture on the planet throughout history has a classical music, they also have a folk music. And that, for my way of looking at it, the classical music is simply an evolution of the folk music.
Uh-huh.
That's my opinion anyway.
Hmm.
So that's what happened in the United States in terms of now we call the folk music or the dance music, you call it pop music or hip hop or whatever you call what it once it gets into marketing and
Yeah.
big business and all of that. They've got all these different names to make something that's very natural seem to be special or something.
Hmm.
So uh, I, so when this thing first starts, it starts before there's like any kind of recording instrumentation,
Mm.
right? So it all starts at the same time. Somehow, as the marketing gets more sophisticated, then they divide they divide
Genres.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They divide the dance music from the classical,
Yeah.
from the meditative listening music to the physical activity,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Which seems like it's been that way all the time, in any culture even in Africa, people dance all the time. But then
Hmm.
you got the most sophisticated rhythmic things that I can think of. It's still uh, it's a lot of rhythms that that are secret. I mean that are so complex. You, nobody would we haven't figured it out yet.
Mm. But still, people are dancing to it.
Well, yeah,
It's just natural for them. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Just when you said that, I had to think about the beginning from Crossings. Somehow it came to
Yeah,
my mind.
yeah. Well, so uh, well, anyway, that's the way it was with me and Shirley, but it was also the way it was with me and Herbie.
Mm.
I mean, Herbie liked me because of some of what he liked about me was my knowledge of the pop vocabulary of the time of the day, right? And I had no idea that he was simply emulating what I had gone through because Jimmy Smith chose me for the same reason. And then when I left Jimmy Smith, I went with Wes Montgomery, who chose me for the same reason.
Mm.
And when Wes died, I went with Eddie Harris, the saxophone player. and
Hmm.
he chose me for the same reason,
Mm.
right? So then you have your friends like I got a friend Kenny Washington,
Yeah.
he said, man, I thought you were an extension of Philly Joe Jones. And I'm saying, well, no, not exactly.
Hmm.
And then he'd hear me play with. We still talk about it sometimes. He'd hear me playing with James Newton or Anthony Davis or Roscoe Mitchell. He said, man,
Yeah.
why do you play with those guys?
Yeah.
I say, well, man, how did you know I played with those guys? He said, because I bought the record. I said, well, then why didn't you buy the record? He said, because you were on it. But that was, no, man, you're supposed to, she said, you were my choice to be the next guy to play like Philly Joe Jones,
Uh-huh.
you know. And I said, no, not exactly. That's not, you know, a little closer might have been Elvin Jones or
Hmm.
Billy Higgins or something, but
Yeah.
well, in reality, it's not even that. Well, you heard me play, so
Yeah, maybe you can talk about your heroes when during that time when you came up with Shirley. Maybe who were your heroes?
well, the major innovators are the major innovators for a reason, right? I
Mm.
mean, they've come up they've found something that's so natural that it's innovative, right?
Mm.
Or they've been able to get in touch with, say, some other culture
Mm.
and brought it into their thing. So the guy for me is still the same guy. Is Max Roach.
You know what? When we hung out, you we somehow we touched on teaching, and
Right?
you said, "Yeah, I don't know what you guys are teaching, but I'm still trying to teach them about Max Roach."
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I had to do a Zoom conference that evidently was seen all over the planet. See, I'm not a very articulate speaker,
I
but
don't know. I
well,
think so.
we don't have to, I know that to be true, but but I had to talk for 2 hours on the evolution of contemporary drumming, right? And now, I know people responded from Turkey and stuff like
Uh-huh.
that, right? But Max Roach somehow grew up at a time like he comes onto the bebop scene around 1942, uh, when he was about 19 years old,
Mm.
right? And somehow around 1944, I think it was, he how somehow ran into Ravi Shankar, right?
Wow.
Right, and of course, if you go to any kind of academic school in the United States in those days, uh, you're going to study European music. So it goes without saying, because there was, just because of the way this country socially is set up, uh, a lot of the times they think of the epitome of almost anything as European.
Hmm.
So that naturally, in other words, like we've got a hall in every, not even every state in the country, but in every city in every state in the country for European music.
Mm.
Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center.
Yeah,
I mean, every city in the United States,
yeah,
we've
it's
got one of
true.
those,
Yeah.
right? So, so anyway, um, Max obviously had studied some European classical music, and now he's somehow gotten in touch with Ravi Shankar and his tabla,
Hmm.
and this is like he must have been about 21 years old then. So Max Roach was his own Tony Williams at that time, and then as he gets more into Charlie Parker and those guys, and this is during the time when the swing era has changed from the swing era to rhythm and blues. So there's swing era rhythm and blues bebop. It's not swing era bebop.
Mm.
It's swing era rhythm and blues and bebop because the rhythm and blues is going to be the dance music. There's
Yeah.
always going to be, I suspect that dance music will always be there. I mean, will always be the basis, or folk music will always be the basis of every culture.
Mm. That
You
makes
know,
sense.
and so the strength of your music or the strength of your culture is going to be the folk music,
Mm.
right? I just think the business people or marketing people find a way to take advantage of that. I mean, I mean, for them, that is the reality.
Mm.
The reality is the folk music. It's the most natural. I mean, it's the thing that people do. It's I think because it deals with the sensual taste. In other
Mm.
words, something that you can feel. I
Yeah.
mean, you
It
can
makes you move.
yeah, right. And you can feel it psychologically, so you you can be invested in the music without having to study it. I
Yeah.
mean, in certain ways, you understand the music as well as the musician because you can feel it,
Yeah.
right? So, in other words, so if it gets a little too sophisticated, then you know it's not necessary, for their feeling,
Mm. Yeah.
you know. But that's just my suspicion. I'm just one person. I don't have to be right,
Mm.
but that's the way I look at it. So anyway, so Max it gets the end of the swing era, and is basically as a teenager or kid is invested in the rhythm and blues. Louis Jordan.
Mm.
Uh, who else? The one that guy that Coltrane played with. Um, oh, ah, I can't think of the name. This guy is supposed to have so much facility on the instrument. Uh,
Who did Coltrane play with? I mean, he played with Dizzy and he played with
I'm saying before Dizzy. This is
before Dizzy.
uh, he's a rhythm and blues guy, alto player
Mm.
with a phenomenal amount of facility. And Benny Golson played with this guy too. Uh, well, anyway, him, you know.
Yeah.
So Max, and Philly Joe and Johnny Griffin also played with these guys. So it
Mm.
was swing era, rhythm and blues, bebop, right? So, but when the beboppers come on the scene, Charlie Parker and all of that, in terms of Max Roach, uh, they began to investigate the Afro Caribbean,
Yeah.
the Cuba and all of that. And that, for me, for a drummer, is beginning to investigate the inevitability of straight eighths
Mm.
because there's some things, interviews of Dizzy, that says one of the things about the Afro Caribbean that we didn't have in swing era or rhythm and blues is they had the ostinato bass pattern.
Right.
There was no ostinato bass pattern in swing era or rhythm and blues.
Mm.
I mean, sort of beginning in rhythm and blues, but the ostinato bass pattern seems to come into fruition with the Afro Caribbean stuff,
Yeah.
right? So Max goes through all of those phases.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you're a young kid today, you don't think of Max as being fluent in those phases.
Mm.
Well, not only is he fluent in it, I mean, he's at the beginning of that,
Mm.
of how translating that into American music.
Wow. Yeah, it's true.
So that's why, I mean, so if he's got uh, straight A's and Indian music, tabla too, he's basically by 1947, well, maybe 51, where drummers are today.
Mm-hmm.
Period. I'm talking about Chris Dave, Marcus Gilmore, Kendrick Scott,
Yeah.
uh, uh, Bill Stewart, uh, all of those guys.
Mm.
Max was Max had covered all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically waiting for for the harmony, for the thing to congeal like the European, the 20th century harmony or whatever to hook up with that rhythm.
When was the first time you heard Un Poco Loco?
Well, in Poco Loco it's 1951. That's why I chose 51
I was
because
going, yeah,
that's Max Roach. But
yeah,
he also that's binary though, right?
mm,
Straight A's basically.
yeah,
Un Poco Loco is is Spanish for a little crazy.
mm-hmm,
But in 1947, Max plays an 8-bar break with Charlie Parker. That's the same academic procedure as Un Poco Loco.
mm,
There's a tune called Clack de Wiederstein,
mm-hmm,
where it's an intro, a 8-bar intro, and Max plays an 8-bar response to that intro, which 8 bars is 4 sections of 5 beats and 4 sections of 3 beats in 8 bars.
mm,
And of course, Un Poco Loco is 2 sections of 5 beats and 1 section of 6 beats,
mm.
right?
It's
That's
incredible. Yeah,
that's Max Roach to me,
yeah,
right?
innovator.
Yes,
Yeah,
you know, like like those two Italian guys whose names I can't think about now. The Sistine Chapel and
Da Vinci.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
like that.
mm-hmm.
And it's another one. There's another Italian guy that's got it like that too. You know.
He'll come back.
Yeah,
He'll come
right.
back.
I'm not articulate, man. I'm sorry. I mean, I sense these things, but I didn't think academically where I wrote it down,
Mm,
but I feel these things. I think.
yeah,
So anyway,
feel.
that's why I picked Max Roach.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I listen to you play on all these records, and also when, I mean, I felt it even more so when I felt it physically when we got the chance to play. Is there's a clarity, there's such a sense of clarity with all the things you're doing. Uh, if you're, you know, you're playing the tune, and sometimes then you're doing something to us, or doing something to the music, doing something to the beat for a certain amount of time, and it's so clear what you're doing. I mean, it's fascinating what you're doing, but it's so clear that it makes everything else shine in another light. But it's also so clear to work with. You know what I mean? You
Well,
give
I know what
players.
you're saying. I'm not so sure you're accurate in terms of my ability.
Well, I felt it when we played, and also when I was listening to you. I mean, you introduce new shades, new ways of looking at the beat for maybe a section, and then the next section comes. It's not as academic as it sounds right now, but I'm amazed at the clarity,
Well,
the
that's a
precision and the clarity.
it's a nice compliment. I'm not so sure it's true, but
It's true to me. Uh, and I was wondering if this is something that came natural to you, uh, or that you aspired to, or something that you really had to work on. Because when I listen to you, even from way back, it seems it's always there.
well, in a funny kind of way, I mean, I didn't emulate Max, but I played. I think that Bird and Diz, by being influenced by the Afro Caribbean, brought the inevitability of straight apes to 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 the world.
Hmm.
I mean, to the point where that's basically all we've been dealing with since.
Yeah, yeah.
Since then, I mean, because it's to the point where the average young kid today doesn't even know the tertiary vocabulary.
Hmm.
Not unless they somehow, uh,
Invest.
or they got turned on to
Yeah,
jazz,
they were
Uncle
exposed to.
Harry, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you know. So, so I was lucky to, being in Washington D.C., to have some of that pop vocabulary at a time when I was playing with Shirley Horn. So
Mm.
that's those two things for me, right? I mean, to see the finer points of both things,
Yeah.
right? So I, that might be the answer to what you're saying. I mean, if you grow up and you know the basic vocabulary of James Brown's drummers, or anybody, Genesis, or and another thing that happened for me that I think I was very lucky for was there was a guitar player in Washington D.C. named Charlie Bird,
Hmm.
and he had his own nightclub. I mean, he was famous. He traveled around the world, and when he went to Brazil, his bass player discovered this new music called the bossa nova,
Mm.
and they brought it back and they started playing it first. And I was there when Charlie Bird turned Stan Getz onto it,
Yeah.
right? And so I got a chance to play with some of those Brazilian guys because to repay Charlie Bird, they would come and play at his club. So since I was sort of a young up and coming improvising musician that could play in straight eighths at a time when most of the improvising guys were playing tertiary,
Yeah.
I got the call to play with these Brazilian guys.
Mm.
So I got a chance to play with Antonio Carlos Jobim and Joao Gilberto, and those, and so that was another way of looking at straight eighths,
Hmm.
right? And that's how I could recognize it in Tony,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was obvious to me that Tony had been checking out the Afro Caribbean and Afro Brazilian music, and so it wasn't like, I mean, I had such a great example of it,
Mm.
you know.
Did Joao Gilberto give you any notes while playing?
You mean written music?
No, no. I mean like advice or
Oh yeah,
anything to do.
yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah.
I talked to Steve Swallow,
Hmm.
and he told me that Joao Gilberto taught him only one thing because they I think they played one night at the Vanguard,
Uh-huh.
and the only thing that Joao Gilberto told him before they went on stage was no the doom. Isn't
Yeah,
that nice?
yeah. Well, he basically told me the same thing, but in a different way,
Like how?
because he was from Bahia, so that's the largest African area of Brazil. somehow he grew up there,
Yeah.
so he had played this rhythm on the guitar that we now call the partito alto.
Mm.
You know, you know, yeah,
Mm.
uh,
Yeah.
but he didn't have a name for it, or at least he couldn't tell me a name for it. But I played it because he played it. That's the way he played it, and so when I would play it like he played it, I,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
uh, he said, don't play it like that. He said, play like the rain,
Ooh.
right?
Wow.
So
I want to see a video of that moment and then see your face like
yeah,
like the rain.
yeah, but he said, oh,
Uh,
how
what did you
beautiful,
do?
huh?
What
Well,
did you do?
then it just means something like what Matt Miles told me when I was playing on the corner, but it just means vary the partito alto.
Mm.
Just vary it. So, I mean, now guys do a bunch of different things, but you can,
Right.
yeah. So I was really lucky. To be from Washington D.C. When you think everybody gets everything from Detroit, Philadelphia, or New York. I mean, I
Mm.
got all that in Washington D.C. plus Shirley Horn, plus
Yeah.
the pop music.
Wow.
So maybe that answers some questions. But
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. But I'm not the only drummer from there.
Yeah.
So the last drummer that Miles had, Ricky Wellman, was from Washington D.C.
He had a
And
special feel.
yeah,
I
the
really
go
like his feel.
he
Yeah.
he was go go.
Mm.
He
Yeah.
was. I mean, he was with a go go band when Miles heard him.
What's the name of that band? I think I know. I've heard of that band.
Chuck Brown, I think it was called.
Huh.
I just know his name. But just if you look it up on the computer, it's just this go go, like hip
Mm.
hop go go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he got a lot of drummers. I mean, there's just some good drummers come from. You had a lot of good drummers in Washington D.C.
Mm.
I was just really lucky, and we got a chance to play with people like, Sam and Dave, Otis Redding,
Mm.
uh, Patti LaBelle, Smokey Robinson. Um, let me see who else. I mean, it was a bunch. It was just because we had a theater there that these acts would come through, and um, Curtis Mayfield with the
Mm.
impressions, Jerry Butler, and it was a, so it was a lot going on,
Wow. Yeah.
and especially for me. I mean, with the drums, and
Mm.
and I didn't have to be very good. I could see, I could hear,
Mm-hmm.
the Temptations,
Mm.
and most of those people I got a chance to play with.
It's incredible. It's incredible. I mean, that is a lot of different situations where you're in a position of learning somebody else's music, and that is something that I was interested in. And that what is the first? I mean, how should I put it? When we played, you were learning the music, you were reading a bit, but mostly you were listening to it, and
Right,
we were playing it over and over again,
right,
and you were acquainting yourself with. with the material.
Right.
I'm wondering what happens inside of you. What is the thing that you're uh, trying to connect to first, or you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of the answers I'm giving you today uh, is just what the first thing that comes to my mind. And
Perfect.
I don't know what I was thinking about then,
Hmm.
but just hearing the question now, um, there are certain things that traditionally people will ask of a drummer that everybody, sort of, it's tradition, in other words. So I got to tell you, one time I got to Coltrane's gig before Elvin got there. So I was talking to Coltrane, talking about Elvin. And he said, Billy, the first thing, how did he put it? The first, basically he sort of said the thing that impressed me most this is his words, the thing that impressed me most when I first heard Elvin play was his professionalism. And I thought,
Mm.
what? Not uh, his fire and his energy or his polyrhythmic expertise.
Mm.
Or, no, he said, his professionalism. So I'm scratching my head, and
Hmm.
he said, his ability to dot the I's and cross the T's, right?
Hmm.
And that's a term I had heard from other musicians, right? Like, how do you, how do you punctuate a sentence? Like, how do you a period, a question mark,
Mm.
an exclamation mark, a comma,
Mm.
you know, right? And most drummers, you know, you think of that, that's supposed to be the job of a drummer.
Mm.
Again, going back to a conductor, whatever,
Yeah.
things that people, you know, that puts things in order.
Mm.
So, of course, so that would be the first thing I would think of when I'm hearing a piece of music. I guess I could understand that some people look at the music and they look at the music first, like da 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 da. But
Hmm.
but but the thing is, what does that mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Because it's just symbols and
Yeah,
signs for
yeah,
something.
yeah. I mean the notes. So so you wonder, well, what does this guy have in mind? Is he even writing down what he actually thought?
Yeah.
You know, and what is it? What does he think about? I mean, what did he want to happen? What is it that he wants to happen?
Mm.
I've been in situations where a guy said, "Well, man, that's not right. I want you to do this," and the guy's response, he said, "Well, that's not what is on the paper."
Yeah.
Well, then my thing is that's not what's on the paper. Then don't play what's on the paper.
Yeah.
Let's play what the guy had in mind.
Sure.
So I guess that's the answer.
That's
I,
it. Yeah.
mhm.
I could hear, I could listen when we played a song all over again. I could hear you waiting or reaching for those exclamation points in tunes, or kind of the, okay, this is one bit and this is the next bit,
Yeah,
and if I get this will bring me to that section.
right.
And but the thing is, when we were playing the song also, then for real, uh, to the tape when we recorded, um, those exclamation points would come every time in a different way, but they would come every time from you, and that way you were helping us to play the song. You know what I mean? Because
I hope so.
what happens a lot is, people play the song, they get they get rid of the melody, they get it out of the way, and then they play changes. You know
Mm,
what I mean?
right,
And then forget about the tune.
right.
You were reminding us of the tune the whole time.
Oh, it's hard to, I haven't had my, if I have any regrets at all, is I've never had a chance to study music as much as I would like.
Mm. Who would have you liked to study with?
Well, it's the kinds of music like like say a guy like Marcus Gilmore, with his own money, has gone to Africa and studied, has gone to Brazil and studied, and he just got finished doing a 2 year uh, thing with the Indian guy, the most popular Indian tabla player now. The guy that played with
Zakir
Charlie.
Hussein.
Yeah, he had 2 years of that. That
Wow.
I
Yeah.
guess a lot of people don't even know that. I mean,
Mm.
there's videos of him in India performing with Zakir, just the two
Yeah.
of them,
Mm.
right? So that's India, Africa, and Brazil,
Mm.
and he's just a young cat. So
Hmm.
I mean, that just shows you how smart he was, and to say nothing about his grandfather, right?
Sure.
And so I mean that's a lot of wisdom.
Hmm.
Like they say, Bach, his father, like his whole family had a history
Mm.
of brother and uncles or whatever.
But
Yeah.
Billy, I mean, Billy, you studied music in another way,
Well,
you
some
know,
people do
and
tell me that.
and you studied with the masters, you know.
Well, I just wanted more academic stuff. You know, like there's certain people, like there's a drummer that plays with Herbie Hancock a lot, named Vinny Colaiuta,
Yeah.
and he was talking about his upbringing, and how he got interested in the drums, and he's talking about some of his studio work, and he'd say, "Man, in those days, I was a good sight reader,
Yeah.
you know, and I never was that,
Mm.
I never had time for that, you know." First of all, I played with so many different bands, and but I never had time to. Well, I guess I don't do that even in English. So I guess I just never got a chance to study as much of
Mm.
anything as I would have liked,
Mm.
academically. But I have had a certain amount of experience with a lot of different
For
things,
sure. For sure.
not just music, but
Yeah.
from traveling to so many different cultures, you
Yeah.
know.
I want to talk to you about M1 Dishi and the experience with Herbie, especially actually the rehearsal process of what
Well,
was it like
it really
when
wasn't much
Herbie.
of that.
Yeah, but I mean, at some point you must have learned the songs that are on the record.
Well,
How?
but that was almost like pop music. When Herbie, when he first, when we first got together, when he called me to make the very first rehearsal, which
Mm.
turned out basically to be the only rehearsal. Um, it was just me. I went to his house. I mean his
Hmm.
apartment, and so he played Maiden Voyage. I said, "Oh yeah, I know that."
Yeah.
The Eye of the Hurricane. Yeah, yeah, I know that. In other words, I already knew everything. I mean, I knew songs that he played with Donald Byrd.
Mm.
I mean, I just knew it. I mean, I loved his playing from the beginning
Hmm.
so much that I just knew the way he played. And there's another thing about him is remember the first record he ever made was a hit record. You know, he wrote Watermelon Man.
Yeah.
You know, that was already, so he's already, his way of thinking about music was already influenced by the Afro Caribbean,
Mm.
um, but as it related to the community in which he grew up.
Right.
So you can't even say it was the Afro Caribbean as related to American. It was because I grew up the same way. I mean, I grew up with guys on on a truck, sometimes with a horse carrying a cart, right, and saying, watermelon, watermelon,
Yeah.
and people would go and buy the watermelon, and
Mm.
guys would do the same thing with chickens,
Hmm.
right? And so Herbie's from Chicago, I'm from Washington D.C., but we both experienced that exact same thing. I knew exactly what I mean. I experienced it the same way he did,
Mm.
except he some way found a way to write it down,
Yeah.
you know, and so uh, what can I say? So that's one thing.
Mm.
The next thing was he obviously was already interested in the evolution of dance music.
Mm.
I mean, more than I even realized,
Mm.
right? You know, but again, that was another relationship we had. In other words, when I was talking about all the people that hired me for my basic pop vocabulary, he was one of those guys. Except,
Mm.
of course, my pop vocabulary with each band was sort of diminishing. In other words, you'd think it would be going up, but it was actually going down
Mm.
because what I wanted to learn was more of the tertiary way of playing. I want
Yeah.
to learn more about Papa Joe Jones and
Hmm.
Kenny Clark, and that's what I was trying to. What in the world is that?
Mm.
They would tell you stories like he said, the swing ride beat. He said Kenny Clark owned that beat. I mean,
Hmm.
the people that told you that, they weren't exaggerating.
Hmm.
And
It's true.
they
Yeah.
did. You say, well, man, if Kenny Clark owned that beat, well, what about Art Blakey? What about Max Roach? No, Kenny Clark
Yeah.
owned that beat.
Right.
So now nobody's talking about Kenny Clark, but I'm thinking, well, maybe I better go and see
Yeah.
what that is. And I had a chance to meet him too. I was lucky. Yeah,
Wow.
I got a chance to meet him.
Hmm. What
And
kind of questions did you ask him?
well, I didn't ask him anything. I just looked at him and started smiling. I mean, I
Mm.
didn't know what to say to him. But he did take me over to a desk in Paris and played some rudiments on the desk for me.
Wow.
You know,
How was
and
that for you?
oh, it was like a dream come true. I mean, I'm trying to think of uh, who was it? Richter, the Russian piano player,
Hmm.
and what's the other guy? Richter. What's the Russian guy's name?
Horowitz,
Horowitz, of course. Richter and another guy too. Uh,
Rubinstein.
yes, those three.
Mm.
What would you do if
Yeah.
one of those grabbed you by the arm and say, let's sit down at the piano and if they play first,
Yeah. Yeah. You just sit there and listen. Take it in.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, but let's go back to that rehearsal with just you and Herbie.
Right, right.
So,
Okay. So we went through about, I don't know, at,
toys?
at least 10 tunes.
Yeah.
At least maybe more, maybe 20.
Hmm.
And I knew them all.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I knew them until we got on the gig. I knew the melodies.
Hmm.
But as soon as we went into the improvisation, the lights went out,
Mm.
you know, and that's the first time that had ever happened. I
Now,
mean,
was that still with Joe Henderson and Garnet Brown?
no, yes, yes,
Yes.
that particular gig, yeah,
Oh man.
but Joe Henderson uh, left right after that.
But you played one gig with Herbie and Joe Henderson in that
Yeah,
configuration.
yeah, yeah,
Oh man, I would
Ed
have
Brown,
loved to hear that.
yeah.
Woo.
Well, it was scary,
Uh-huh.
because they all knew that,
Yeah.
and they all. I mean, they knew what happens after the melody,
Hmm.
you know, and that's another way of looking at improvisation. I mean, it's another way of examining, for want of a better word, advanced harmonic concepts.
Mm.
And a lot of that is advanced European harmonic concepts,
Hmm.
right? It's not
Yeah.
all European, but it's advanced. And
Mm.
that's enough that makes you more interested in, say, Asian harmonic concepts, or because you look at even Joe Beam, you can say, well, but this is sort of Chopin, and
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
but there are some other things that it's not that,
Mm.
or they'll say, well, Duke Ellington had some French influences, but then there's statements that I've heard that they say that Ravel and Duke Ellington were arriving at some of the same conclusions simultaneously
Hmm.
at the same time,
Hmm.
right? And so anyway, but Herbie, they were playing another way. I mean, the records are one thing. I
Yeah.
mean, you can hear it, when you're just sitting there, you don't have to play. You can see that this was this and this is this. But when you have to play, and that's happening at that time, the next time I didn't hear anything else until we played the melody, take the song out.
So
So
what
that
were you doing in the middle?
God only knows. You know,
Holding on. Yeah.
you know, and but you begin to hear it. You just begin. I
Hmm.
can't say anything else, but that you can hear it, that you can relate it to what you already know.
Yeah.
You know.
There's a recording of you guys from the Netherlands. I think from, what is it, 71 or 72, playing Toys with
Uh,
very long bass solo intro.
well, it was always a very long bass.
Yeah. And then Herbie was playing acoustic.
Right. Oh yeah.
Man. And you
I don't.
take it
I,
out
I
there.
don't. I don't think it was the Netherlands. I think it was France, actually. Nice.
Hmm. Hmm.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can
That's
be.
one of
Yeah.
my favorite. That's one of my favorite Herbie solos. And
It's
there are a
incredible.
lot.
It's 20 minutes or something.
And
Wow.
and you got a lot of favorite Herbie Hancock solos, but that's one of my very favorites.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
fact that I was actually playing on it.
Hmm.
But one thing I learned about that solo, because that's a bootleg. That's not even a thing. And I realized I could hear some of the odd groupings that he and Ron and Tony could play,
Hmm.
that it was still escaping me. You know,
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't even remember
You mean
that.
back then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't even realize until I heard the record that that he could still play some things that I still wasn't familiar with rhythmically,
Mm.
right? And then I was disappointed for a minute that I could still hear that he was still far ahead of me,
Mm.
even though I'm because I only heard the record about 10 years ago, so
Yeah.
by that time I thought I had grown a little bit, and I said, oh man, I still didn't hear you
Yeah.
know Yeah. No,
But no, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, he's a brilliant, brilliant man, but not only harmonically, but rhythmically.
Mm,
Um, and and he and Tony. I mean, the same thing with Tony is because Tony sort of came up in a academic setting. You know, a town that has a lot of academic activity.
Boston.
Yeah,
Mm,
and so I mean, Alan Dawson was one of his main teachers, and Dawson came up with a rudimental book that, as far as I'm concerned, is unsurpassed
mm,
because most rudimental books are based on written to be played with a conductor. You play with an ensemble, and there's a guy conducting the ensemble,
mm.
right? And Dawson's book is the only one where you use the bass drum, so that makes you the conductor. But it's just the basic rudiments, the drum rudiments. But by having to play the bass drum with it, puts that in a certain kind of order that I thought was a genius.
Mm.
On the other hand, I know when I saw Pete LaRocca for the first time, which is when Charlie Bird turned Stan Getz onto the bossa nova. Uh, Pete LaRocca was playing with Stan,
Mm.
and he was telling me he was going to move to Boston because he had some kind of gig up there with the Herb Pomeroy with the Herb Pomeroy big band, and Tony was still living up there then, you know, and so Pete LaRocca was originally originally a timbale player, right? So there, Tony got a chance to see firsthand uh, the inevitability of straight eighths
Yeah.
beyond just the pop music of the day, right?
Yeah.
To see the authenticity of it.
Mm.
For me, if it's authentic, that means it has a reason. You play it, for a reason. I mean, it has a musical purpose.
Yeah. That
You know,
makes sense. Yeah.
and so he had that, among everything else that he got that the same way I got the Brazilian thing in Washington D.C.
Mm.
And I don't I forget what I'm talking about that.
Me too, actually, but we
Herbie.
got
Oh,
there.
Herbie. Herbie. Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
Herbie. So anyway, so those are two kind of authenticities that Tony and Herbie have. Herbie, studied. He played with the Chicago Symphony when he was 11 years old,
Mm. Playing
right?
Mozart. Yeah.
It was that and something else too, though. I can't think
Hmm.
exactly what it was, but he said that it was some white kid that showed him jazz changes as late as when he was 17 years old or something.
Yeah.
So most of his understanding in that regard was European, right?
That's something actually I read the other day. I was listening. I was playing Legos with my son, and we were listening to Speak Like a Child. And at some point, I started reading the booklet again. I've been reading it a lot of times, obviously, but yeah, I hadn't read it in a long time. So I was reading the liner notes, and Herbie said, "Yeah, I in the past years, I've been working hard on getting my swing feel, uh, you know, in shape." Uh, and I think this is my most swinging record of all of them that I did. Now, we talked about taking off. That record swings like hell, you know?
Well, I mean, what are you going to do? You had
I mean,
Butch Warren was the other cat that I went to high school with.
oh, wow. Wow.
right? That you put that, and Higgins,
Sure. But
right?
still, I mean, Herbie's swinging. But I was wondering if he ever told you anything about how he worked on it.
No, but I get a general idea. I mean, he just did the European thing first,
Hmm.
right? I mean, for me, to have to describe it in pedestrian terms, is Herbie can resolve some of the most difficult European or complexities, European phrases. He can resolve that with some of the funkiest blues patterns and
Yeah,
vice versa. So you have to
totally.
know those. And then when you add whatever uh, uh, Afro Caribbean stuff that he knows, that at my generation, his generation, and Tony's generation, my generation is the same generation. So that means we're second generation in acknowledging the Afro Caribbean influence on so called jazz music because,
Hmm.
you know, when Bird and Diz and those guys started doing it, it was sort of like straight eighths in the A section, swing the bridge, or
Yeah,
swing the A sections and Latin the bridge,
yeah.
you know, and like that. But you know, at a certain point, we get it to now it's almost everything was always all the way straight eighth all the way to through, or these different variations of whatever the Afro Caribbean is, and then Americans has the audacity to try to even mix up the cultures, the
Hmm.
Brazilian culture with the Cuban culture,
Hmm.
right? Which, of course, is almost disrespectful as that is, sends you more back into Africa, you know,
Hmm.
because that's where it all comes from originally, anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
So, as much as you're saying, well, I did this, but this, you know, this is clave here, but then I did this with it, and they say, well, you can't do that. Well, if you say that to the Cubans, they say, no, you can't do that. Or if
Hmm.
you go to Brazil
It's
and
sacred stuff.
they say, yeah, you do it there, you say, no, you can't do that. It's
Hmm.
only the Americans who will say, well, I like this with this, you know.
Yeah, because that's what America is also.
Right.
It's this with this. Yeah. Okay.
So did
But
we
I wanted.
finish Herbie? We never even finished it. Yeah. But that's what I one of the things I learned. What I like about him,
Hmm.
what I love about him
Yeah.
is that he's so fluent in that regard of playing uh, Afro American music, blues with European, and mixing the Afro Caribbean with that.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I was wondering in the evolution of M1 Dishi, um, pieces like on crossing. I mean, there's stuff where I love the flexibility of the group, and where there's collective improvisations and astonishing multi-directional stuff going on, and then you're back together for just that tiny written stuff, and then you go into a groove, and then it's free again, and then there's just another little cue but it must have been well rehearsed at some point, that those little cues, I mean, you know
Well,
what I mean? And
I know exactly what you mean.
so
Uh,
I'm curious about those.
well, you're thinking of it as a rehearsed arrangement, but what you're leaving out is that in those days, if you were a member of an ensemble, you worked more than 30 weeks out of the year,
Yeah.
and most of those were 6 nights a week. So you got a chance to play it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. that's why when you hear a Charlie Parker record or a Sonny Rollins record or whatever, why they're still playing them today
Mm,
when it was like 1956 or
mm,
1947 or 1962. You know, we're still hearing those. I'm pretty sure that certain things that you've heard when you were 21 that I heard when I was 21,
mhm. Sure.
right?
When you
Right?
just said 62, were you thinking of the bridge?
Huh?
When you,
Well, that's one of the drummers from Washington D.C. that played with Shirley before me was on that record.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
wow, yeah. But
yeah,
were you thinking about that record? You were just
yeah.
naming so specific times. I was
Right.
wondering, okay, which records is he thinking about?
Well, you know everything. You're abnormal in that respect. Well, let's not say abnormal. Say advanced in that
Mm,
respect. You know. Oh man.
mm.
No, man. So that band. So anyway, we played. Herbie has such command of all these like on the actual thing, Sleeping Giant.
Yeah,
Uh, what is a point in that part where they go into I forget five or seven. Don't
yeah,
ding.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me think.
Maybe it's just three. Maybe it's just three.
It's something odd. Let's say
Yeah,
it's something
yeah,
odd.
yeah. And they stay in there for a long time.
Yeah,
But I mean, I didn't realize that's what they were going to do. I don't know how it. Buster might have uh, done it.
mm,
You know? And Herbie's that kind of guy. I guess Miles taught him that if somebody does something, he just does it too,
hmm,
and has enough experience to know what to do with it.
mm.
So I
Wow,
mean,
yeah.
a tune like Sleeping Giant, I remember we played that one night for about 2 hours. Because you had the different soloists.
Yeah, different sections.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So each section gets longer and longer and longer.
Hmm. Hmm.
you know.
Wow. And then, there's a point where it seems like Miles must have dug what M1 Dishy was doing, because half of the band ends up in on the corner.
I tell you that Miles came to hear the M1DC band, and
You
he was
didn't, but
oh
go ahead.
well anyway he came to hear the band at the Vanguard, and evidently he had been there a couple of nights before. In other words, he'd come 3 or 4 nights in a row,
Yeah,
and so he was sitting at the Vanguard right on the by the drums. I didn't see him, because we were playing so hard and like a rock band. We were really playing hard and loud, and so I had perspiration in my eyes. So I went off the stand, just felt my way to the seat to sit
yeah,
down so I could wipe my eyes.
yeah.
And so he was sitting there. So and
You were ending up in his lap.
almost, you know, and of course that was scary. Yeah, well, I mean, he was already familiar with the band. I mean, Benny had
With
already done Bitches
Bridges
Brew,
Brew. Yeah.
right? And and Buster seemed to be very familiar with some of that material.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, he had been playing with Miles in the 60s, I
oh,
think,
right, 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 right,
subbing for Ron, right?
right,
Yeah.
right, right. So yeah, we were still. It was a surprise that he was interested in me.
Hmm. Mm.
And the things that he was interested in, and the things that he could teach. The information he could impart.
Right.
You know, I mean, he just did it. I mean, but I think because he was such a great he was a great teacher because he was a great student.
I think, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
You
imagine.
seem like a you seem like a great student as well, Billy. You know, it seems like you're checking out all the young guys all the time, and it seems like you're checking out the elders
Mhm.
also. Still, you're still searching.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I didn't know there was anybody. I thought that was everybody did that. What else are you gonna do? I mean, how are you gonna?
Mm,
I mean, as an artist, as I mean, as a you need, it's just so much to learn.
mm,
And then on the other hand, you got to make a living too. You have to survive.
sure.
So you have to be when you see that you see the music evolve. You you have to evolve.
Mm. Yeah, I was wondering about another record actually, uh, which is one of my favorite records. This one.
How did you know about that?
Well, I think well, I grew up listening to In a Silent Way and Mahavishnu and these kind of, Herbie, Chick, Miles. My father is and my mother were big fans, are big fans of this music. So my father used to hit me to this record as a kid. So you
Wow.
know,
You know, I forget where we were at some concert, but the guy that brought that photo brought it
mm,
to me first. I mean, I was the first one in the band that he saw, and he said, I brought this. It was this big too. It was like, he said,
wow,
I, I said, I want to bring this to you guys.
yeah,
So I said, okay, come on. I
yeah.
brought it to Herbie, and he evidently he liked it, so he put it on.
It's a great cover.
Yeah.
Well, so I've been growing up with this music, and then when I came to Cologne to study with a great teacher, my great teacher Hubert Nuss, he I was telling him about, Herbie is my guy. I'm trying to check out everything that I can from Herbie, and this is what I know, and he's like, yeah, do you know this record Sabino? Of course, I knew Sabino, because my parents loved Weather Report and Miles and everything, but I didn't know this record, so I checked it out, and I think the first thing he showed me was In a Silent Way. He's like, yeah, that's the version of In a Silent
Right,
Way,
right, right,
that's
right.
the version you should check out. But yeah, any memories from that recording and how it came about, and what the process was, I'm really curious.
Well, first of all, I wasn't the only drummer on there.
I know, yeah.
Again, so I don't know how exactly it went down, but I had another gig. It's just like the Shirley Horn thing again. I had another gig, and I had to go out of the house to the garage, and the car was in the garage in the back, and I I had to lock the door. I had to lock two doors. You go out of the kitchen, lock the door, and then from the kitchen door to the back door is another door because you could go down in the basement. So I locked that door, went to this door, closed it, and locked that door on my way to the car to go to the gig with Marion McPartland, right? So just as I locked the door, the second door, I can hear the phone ringing, right? So I was thinking, oh man, I'm already running late. It's probably not for me anyway. So now I walk halfway to the garage, and I can still hear the phone ringing. It's still ringing. So somehow I turn back around, unlock the door. His phone's still ringing. Then unlock the next door,
Yeah.
and I answer the phone, and it's Zavino. And he says, Billy. I said, yeah. He said, it's Joe, man. And of course, he talks like that, the accent. And he said, man, can you get here right away? you know, uh, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah, where? Well, we're at the recording studio, and it's so and so and so, and Atlantic Records. Boom, boom, boom. All right, I'll get there as soon as I can. Now, that means I gotta go get
Talk to
another set.
Marion.
I gotta go. I gotta get another drum set first,
Hmm.
and they're already at the studio,
Hmm.
you know. And I gotta get somebody to cover for me on Marion's gig. So somehow I pull all that together,
Hmm.
get the drums in the car, and I'm living in New Jersey. I'm not living in New York.
Hmm.
I'm living in New Jersey. Now I gotta go. So it's the whole thing takes about an hour. Get a drummer. So I get there, lug my drums up this thing, set them up, you know, and now I'm perspiring like water, like. And I said, "Man, okay, Joe, what do you want me to do?" And he says, "Do only what you have to do."
Ah, that's great.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So, and it turned out, I mean, at least we all felt that that silent way was very special. It seemed very,
Hmm.
very spiritual in
Totally. Yeah.
that time. And I don't even know if it came across on the record or not, but I know we all felt this special thing.
Yeah. I feel it too. I wasn't there, obviously, but that's all we have, the record. So,
Yeah, but it's nice to know that it came across on the recording.
hmm. Hmm.
And
How was he?
that's how I met. That was the first time I played with Herbie. Played
Oh
with him.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
How did that feel?
Well, it was Herbie and Joe. I mean, it was just a combination of all. It was still all of this kind of wondrous thing,
Hmm.
that you were a part. It makes you feel like uh, the rest of time or the world didn't exist. I mean, this thing was so powerful, so strong
Hmm.
that that was it. You just sat there and it's funny how I can say that now. I'm thinking of it now. You could sit there and just kind of enjoy that. You could, wow, wow. This is
Yeah.
this large WOW.
Ah.
Yeah. And people are, smiling and laughing and
Hmm.
congratulating each other. So, like,
I mean that remark of Sabino's, "Do only what you have to do,"
yeah,
is so much easier when you're really enjoying is
yeah,
in that way. You're enjoying everything that's around you, and you don't really have to play because you're
right,
already enjoying it, and then you have a feeling, and then you follow that feeling.
right.
Mhm. Mm.
Yeah, but it's almost like he had learned that from somebody. Like somebody must have told him that at one point.
Mhm.
His growing up or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like some wisdom that's been passed down.
Yeah, it sounds like a timeless thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Speaking of continuing to learn something, what is some of the recent stuff you've been checking out, or stuff that you've trying to get under your fingers?
Well, I'm getting pretty old now, so I've got some patterns and things that I've had for 10, maybe even 20 years that I still haven't gotten together yet,
Mm.
you know. and it has to do with it has to do with a lot of the younger guys. You know, there's there's some younger drummers that I just like, and it keeps happening. It's not like I like this guy. I mean Marcus Gilmore's old now.
Hmm.
I mean he's already 31 or what 32 or something now.
Mm.
But I remember when I first met him at the North Sea Jazz Festival. I think he was 16. He was already playing with VJ.
Mm.
In fact, he gave me the first VJ record that I had.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I like his playing. I'm trying to think. There's a video of a master class of his that I play for my students a lot. So there's that, and there's a video of a recording with Justin Brown,
Mm.
and I asked Justin about it. It had to be more than 5 years ago, and I said, Justin, this is spectacular. I really love this. I said, uh, have you heard Marcus's? Because they're both odd grouping things.
Yeah, yeah,
Groove
yeah.
style with odd groupings. He said, yeah, that's the same thing that I'm doing. And it didn't sound like the same thing to me. So
Mm.
two things. So I'll take it to the students and we'll transcribe it and compare
Nice.
it and stuff like that. And so I've got quite a few of those kinds of things that I would. So if you talk about new, I mean, I've got quite a few of those things.
Yeah.
I can, if I had to stop now for some reason and not look at anything else, I'm sure I have enough stuff to go for the
To
rest of my
work on.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the rest of my life,
Mm.
you know. So it has to do with a lot of the younger cats. Except, I found that thing with Max, that thing in 1947 with I told you,
Clacto. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Clapton Peterson, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'll turn the students on, so I'll play that sometimes,
Mm.
you know, um, because it's hard even in my generation to realize Max's influence. In other words, I mean, he influenced Art Blakey, he influenced
A-
Roy Haynes,
And Tony.
and Philly Joe Jones. Oh, of course,
Hmm.
all of those guys influenced Tony, but I mean,
Hmm.
that Max influenced them.
Mm.
Art Blakey. You think Art Blakey was older? You think he was older than Max? Well, he
Hmm.
is older than Max, but I
Mm.
mean, that just shows you how advanced he was for that time,
Yeah.
for this time, really.
Mm.
You know,
Are there some max patterns that you're still working on today at the drums?
they could clack the Wiederstein is one.
Yeah. Would you
you know,
like to demonstrate it?
well, I can't really play it yet, but I can give you a general idea.
I would love to see it.
Well, you can always play it on the computer sometime.
Sure, but we can't hear you all the time, so woo.
And the thing about that is that it hits on the one after the 8 bars perfectly, like it
Mm.
was composed for that.
It sounds
Because
composed, yeah.
when I first heard it, I couldn't understand how Charlie Parker could even hear when to come in.
Hmm.
And in fact, I didn't even think it was Max. It sounded more like Roy Haynes. That kind of thing sounds more like Art Blakey or Max Roach to me. I mean,
Right, yeah.
or Art Blakey or Roy Haynes.
Mm.
You know. So
Thank you.
you have to listen to it, man,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and Bird and Miles, they just come in perfectly, just like bang.
Great.
How in the world you hear that? So I mean, of course you can hear, um, Art Blakey a lot of times. If he's playing a night Tunisia, he'll say, but this is
Wow.
and
Thank you, Billy.
so and you begin to understand where these things come from.
Mm,
There are certain rudiments this stuff comes from, and you say, "Oh wow, that's just a this." Like I asked Max what the poco local thing was, right? I mean, I knew the sticking and whatever. I thought I knew the sticking, but he had another name for it. There's a rudiment called a paradiddle,
mhm.
right? And I said, man, what is this in Pokemon? He said, man, it's just an inverted paradiddle. Inverted paradiddle. So I'm sure piano players have things like that they say about it, but and then we think about the inverted paradiddle. Then then there's a drummer that plays with a group called Tower of Power, and he's got a book, you know, where he plays some of his pop innovations. But the name of it is the inverted paradiddle.
Mm,
So you begin to say, oh man, of all the other things, we already know all the other things Max has done. You mean Max has got to invert? I mean, then Garibaldi is Tower of Power is playing Max Roach too authentically.
right.
You know, you
It's all connected.
it would seem that way.
hmm
It can't be that simple, but sometimes you
Mm,
just say, you can just. That's what I mean by studying,
right.
like Tony Williams with the Swiss triplet.
Mm,
And how many different ways that's been used. So you think about Ralph Peterson or Jeff Watts uh, taking that Swiss triplet of the innovations that Tony did with that, and they've taken it and put it in odd groupings, you
right.
know, odd time signatures and stuff.
hmm
Wow, who would think you'd do this with that?
Yeah.
So I'll do that, you know,
hmm
I will have done that. And somebody say, "Oh, that's Jeff Watts." No, no, that's Tony Williams. No, that's Jeff Watts. No,
Yeah.
that's Ralph Peterson.
Mm,
you know, yeah.
yeah.
So
So many entry points to access the same
right, right.
thing.
And it sounds different, and it works different. And it's been used on different compositions, and
hmm
you know,
Sure.
yeah, it's done. It's done well. I mean, and to the point where, for me, you'll have different reasons for using it. In other words, a certain sound will suggest using that.
Mm, right. I mean, the more ways you have of looking at one thing, it will come to you in different moments then,
Yeah,
because you don't only just know one use for it. Yeah.
that's one of the things I tell the students in the exact same words you just said. And I'll say it's it's not how many things you know, but how many ways you can play one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So in other words, like you have, this one thing, say, well, that fits with this, but it fits with the general motif, but maybe this pattern you can't play it slow enough or you can't play it fast enough. So let's take this pattern and play it this.
Yeah. Turn it around.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Inverted.
but then it has to be clear though. I mean, it has to be. I mean, you can't,
And
So
it can only be clear if you really know it.
yes, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Yeah,
Billy, I'm curious what you expect or what you're looking for in your fellow musicians. What does somebody must have for you to want to play with somebody?
well, come on, um, I'm still learning. So uh, I mean, there's things I like in music. I like lyricism, rhapsodic kind.
Hmm.
I have a tendency towards that. So I like people that like that. I remember a record I did of mine. I can't think of what's the name of it? Oh, I think it's Oceans of Time, and
Hmm.
and Chris Potter's is
Yeah.
taking a solo, and for some reason we did 3 takes of it, and Chris Potter's solo, as far as saxophone players are concerned, was you know he played 3 immaculate solos, and amazing solos, right? And so, when I had to choose one, I chose what moved me the most was the most melodic, most
Right.
lyrical. But when I played some of those for from other saxophone players, because it's Chris Potter, so they said, "Man, but why did you choose that one? Why did you choose this one?" Then another
Yeah.
guy said, "But why didn't you choose this one?"
Mm.
No, that's that's the one for me. That's one for me. And I remember um, uh, I I had this record. I had Eddie Henderson playing trumpet on the record. I mean, I flew him in from California. Of all the trumpet players you had in New York, because I like the fact that he plays so melodically,
Hmm.
you know, and So anyway, that's what I like in a lot of musicians. Um, like we just lost Gary Peacock,
Hmm.
and I was going to call him. I didn't even know he was sick, but I
Mm.
wanted to call him because I had just discovered one of his compositions that I couldn't stop thinking about.
Which one?
It's a tune called Gardenia.
Gardenia. On
Yes.
which record is this?
Well, I heard it by somebody else, but I heard it's on a record that Peter Erskine plays drums on.
Oh, with Gabarek, and I think it's with Jan Gabarek.
It
Is it?
might be. It might
Yeah.
be.
Mm.
Yeah, because I was just talking to Mark Copeland. I think he said that's one of. But the record I heard it on was an Andy Laverne record,
Hmm.
and
Right.
I just couldn't. I'm still thinking about it.
Mm.
I,
Nice. I'll check it out.
okay, yeah, maybe we can play it.
Yeah, that would be nice.
And I mean, I know some Gary Peacock tunes, but this one really moved me.
Mm.
So I have a choice. And then I've got all these records. Clifford Brown with strings,
Yeah.
uh, Coltrane ballads,
Yeah.
uh, Billie Holiday, Lady in Satin,
Hmm.
and you know, and then okay, uh, Dexter Gordon with the strings that he did with the Danish trumpet player arranger. Uh,
Oh, Danish trumpet player. I wonder.
Arranger and led the radio band for a while.
Uh, was it the?
You
I'm
know,
not
the one
sure.
that plays like Miles. He did a thing
Oh,
with,
Palle Mikkelborg.
yeah, but he did
Oh,
a string arrangement, a string CD for Dexter Gordon.
oh, I don't know that one. I'll check it out. Great.
Yeah,
Is it with Dexter or was it
yeah,
for Dexter?
with
Oh, great.
yeah,
So it's
feature.
a so that's a later project, like from the 80s or something or 70s.
I guess. Yeah,
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 nice.
yeah,
I'll check that out. Wow.
yeah. You know, so anyway, so I like guys that play like that. That's why I like Mark Turner.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's like why I like Coltrane.
Hmm.
You know, everything Coltrane played to me sounded like a ballad.
Even the
Everything.
later side. Yeah.
Yeah, particularly the later stuff.
Hmm. I was just learning Expression, the song.
That's the one. That's the one.
Man, and I was learning and then he's improvising
Mhm.
and he's playing all this stuff, but to me it felt like a hug, you know?
You know,
Woo.
so I like guys that play like that.
Yeah.
You know, so I just played a gig with George Cables last weekend, and he was playing this. You know, I played with McCoy. I played with McCoy Tyner for a couple of years,
Mm.
and they're playing. And George chose this one tune called "You Taught My Heart to
To
Sing."
sing, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound like a McCoy Tyner tune really, but I'm still
Yeah.
thinking about it.
It's soulful.
Yeah,
Soulful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So uh, I, I like I like I like Ben Street. You know, you know. Although Eddie Gomez played with Bill, so a lot of his playing will have those kind of rhapsodic motifs. Now I
Mm.
don't know if he always played that way because he is Spanish. The Spanish people have that romantic way of
Mm-hmm.
looking at stuff. But some of it I think he might have gotten from Bill. So I
Mm.
like him. Buster. Yeah.
Mm. Can you describe your relationship? I mean, a musical relationship with Buster?
Well,
What makes it work for you?
well, I'm thinking of which way where to start. You know, um, First of all, I've known him for quite a while. Um, we met on Betty Carter's gig,
Mm.
right? So, and he's a singer's bass player as far as I'm concerned. He's a singer's
Mm.
bass player like I'm a singer's drummer.
Nancy Wilson?
Yeah. Well, it
Yeah.
was Sarah Vaughan before Nancy.
Oh, right. Yeah.
In fact, we played in Detroit with Betty Carter. Betty Carter took the band to Birdland in New York, but I couldn't do that because I had to go back and rejoin Shirley in Washington D.C. And then Sarah Vaughan took whoever was in Betty's band to California, and then Nancy took Buster from Sarah at in California. But not until Buster had already, made that live recording with Sarah in Copenhagen at
Mm.
Tivoli. You know, so Buster, I remember he came to me one time. He said, "Man, I got to get back to New York. I want to play some music." And I said, "Well, Buster, you're making really good, great money with Nancy Wilson, and these guys in New York are really playing, man. They're really pushing the envelope." And he's never let me forget that. Almost every
Mm.
time we talk, he said, "Man, you didn't think I could cut it." Yeah, you know, and of course, as soon as he came back to New York, everybody just. So one thing about Buster, uh, for me, I'll give you. Okay, I'll put it this way. Uh, I was in Japan with one of my friends driving around as crowded as those streets are, as heavy as the traffic is. We're riding around listening to the Hank Jones Great Jazz Trio, right?
Mm,
Four of those records. Listen to Tony, basically. Tony and Ron and
Ron,
Hank.
yeah.
And so we get somewhere, we're turning the corner. And I said, wow, listen to what Ron's doing here, man. I mean, this is really swinging. This is really swinging. He said, man, that's not Ron. He said, that's Buster.
Woo.
So that's what I like about Buster.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
you hear it and you hear it with Shirley on that record. I
yeah,
mean, look at
totally.
those choice of notes,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm.
Buster's father was a great bass player, but his father was also a better than average drummer. And so Buster's rhythms, without the notes, really responds to the cymbal beat.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So I like, so basically the guys I liked or I felt most comfortable with of in those days. Now I'm playing catch up, whoever I get a chance to play with, I don't pick and choose anymore,
Mm,
but it was basically Cecil McBee, Buster Williams, George Mraz, and Eddie Gomez.
mm.
I shouldn't say that because now whoever sees this, he will say, "Well, what about?"
Yeah, yeah, sure. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. Let's talk about Ben Street. So when you guys first started playing, because I love the I wanted to say hookup, but almost I said hiccup,
Yeah.
which isn't true at all. The hookup between you and Ben. Um, but I talked to Ben about this because he's such a big fan of Buster, right?
Ah, I don't know him like that.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, he sounds different to me
Yeah.
as well, but he loves Buster.
Ah.
But I was wondering, like, getting to know Ben and how you guys hooked up and how you guys, yeah, how did you find yourselves together?
Well, for me, it was almost immediate because uh, Ben likes multi-directional playing. I like multi-directional playing. I like that, and I never get enough chances to do it to perfect it better. But that's really my ambition to be better at that. I'm more of a Milford Graves, Andrew Surreal,
Mm,
uh, those guys.
mm,
Uh, Sonny Murray,
mm,
you know, for me, that's really the most advanced way of playing the drums. Uh,
mm.
Rashid, you know, and I think it has a vocabulary that can be studied. It's not just
No, no, sure, yeah.
you know. So, but Ben seems to like that too. On the other hand, he really has studied the Afro-Caribbean vocabulary. Besides just the fact that he's been with Danilo for
Mm,
about 20 years,
mm,
and just thinking about that, just Danilo, the kind of musician Danilo is. I mean, he's this his Afro Caribbean historian that's
yeah,
also playing with Wayne Shorter,
yeah.
right? And Ben has those are some very sophisticated rhythms. Given him the fact that he likes multi-directional. I just heard a gig he did with Andrew Surreal with
Yeah.
David Varela and Bill Frisell.
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
Man, I missed it. I missed it. I
Uh,
wanted to hear it, but I missed it. Mm-hmm.
and then he did one with Andrew a couple of weeks before that with Joe Lovano, just a trio.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just what he likes to do, or who
Yeah.
likes him. But he's got another thing that I like that reminds me more of, say, somebody like Jimmy Garrison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
And if you just want to talk about playing 4/4, he can really do that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so right now I think Ben is my favorite.
Mm. Great. Um, multi-directional playing. I have to think about this record as well.
Uh-oh, whoops. I forgot about that. Yeah.
It has you and also Alphonse Bouzon on
Yeah.
drums.
Yeah. Yeah, Muzan was well. That's another thing. I think Muzan is one of the guys that was around when the straight eighths were being, as it begins to evolve more,
Mm.
or what you could call it fusion or whatever,
Mm.
or which is I think Tony Williams's innovation is that he innovated fusion drumming,
Yeah.
or the word he used, jazz rock drumming.
Mm-hmm.
So so there's Tony and Jack and maybe me a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and Billy Cobham and
Mm.
but uh, Alphonse comes as the next wave of that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So he's very innovative too for me,
Yeah.
you know.
Do you
In
have
fact,
any? Oh, go
okay.
ahead.
Well, I'm saying, in fact, evidently, one of the reasons that the two of us were on that record is that they were choosing somebody for the weather report.
Oh, that was kind of a tryout thing in a way,
Evidently,
disguised as a record.
yeah, yeah. And because because I didn't think about it, but I'd already played with Zavano. Now I was
Mm.
playing with Wayne, and so it looks like I was being considered.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, uh, I talked to Reggie Workman, a year or so after that, and he had been talking to Wayne, and and uh, and he said that Wayne was, very close to Herbie, but very close to McCoy too. And he said, and according to Reggie Workman, he said both of them told Wayne that I was going to join their band.
Mm.
That I was going to play with, and so he said, according to Reggie, Wayne just said, well, if he's got all, you know, let him, deal with that.
Yeah, I see. That's
But,
interesting.
but of course, the weather report would have been, I mean, I learned my little Brazilian stuff, and I had my little pop stuff, and I probably could have done okay in there.
Sure, yeah. It's actually, yeah, it's inspiring to think about these. I don't know, do you sometimes do that? Imagine somebody else in place of somebody else in a
Oh,
classic recording or a
yeah,
classic
yeah,
band.
yeah, sure.
I do that quite a lot, and sometimes I can hear actual music because I know the record so well, and the other person maybe
Right,
I
exactly.
can hear actual music in my head, but
Of course. Yeah.
how was Wayne as a band leader? Do you remember that
Well,
session?
you know how Wayne is, or how Wayne is supposed to be. I wouldn't be the only one to tell you that he might be a little eccentric,
Hmm.
you know. So I think at first he called me for some rehearsals because he was going to have a quartet with uh, a Canadian guitar player whose name, of course, now I can't think of. But he was one of the first guitar players to be playing more like McCoy Tyner kind of chords and
Mm.
those kind of, we got a bunch of those kind of guitar players today, but this was the first one. Sonny Fortune was his name. Sonny Fortune.
Well, Sunny Fortune, isn't that also a saxophone player?
I'm not Sonny Fortune. Sonny Fortune is one of my best friends. Uh, Something Fortune. Sonny Greenwich.
Ah, okay.
Sonny Greenwich.
Mm.
Sonny Greenwich. So Sonny Greenwich, Cecil McBee, and myself. That was going to
Mm.
be the Wayne Shorter Quartet.
Mm.
And then he, maybe a month or so later, he called me for the recording. And who's the bass player on there?
It's Cecil McBee,
Oh yeah. So that was
and the guitar player is Gene Bertoncini.
yeah. So I guess that's what
It's a
it ended up.
different thing, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it ended up being
Huh.
with an extra drummer or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Wow,
So
yeah. Hmm.
yeah, man, it's yeah. I don't. It's funny. I never think about that stuff. If you hadn't asked me, I wouldn't. You know, it's interesting that I even remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never think about it. I mean, I think
Mm.
about Wayne, but not with me.
Mm.
You know, yeah, Wayne
Yeah.
is, and of all, of course, the the band that he has now is the band I would have liked to have played in.
Woo.
With Danilo and John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a mind game. That's a band to imagine. Wow. You with those guys. That's incredible.
So
When was the last time you played with Wayne?
then, and,
That recording.
yeah,
Mm.
and I also the only other guy I haven't played with that I would have liked to have played with is Keith.
Mm. Right. You never crossed paths.
Oh, we crossed paths. For some reason, Jack would bring Keith around to hear me. I don't know if Jack was trying to get out of the band or whatever, but yeah, he brought Keith around to hear me a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It's another mind game. The
yeah,
Keith Jarrett trio with Billy Hart.
yeah.
Wow, yeah. Maybe it'll happen someday. Who knows?
Well, somehow whatever has happened has been not too bad.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
got a chance to play with you.
Oh
I,
man.
I think that was really important for me.
Oh, I don't know what to say about that, but I'll
It's
say the
true.
same about you, man. It was an incredible experience to hear your sound up close, to hang with you, and to feel what it feels like if you hit anything. Um, that energy also. I mean, I felt like you start at a place of energy and intensity, and that doesn't have to do anything with a lot of notes or hitting something hard or whatever. It's just an energy. Even if you don't play, that's a different place where others, I mean, maybe never get to, but also when they get to it, that takes a long time for them in a song, and you start you start, or in a concert, or in a lifetime, you start. That's where you start, and I was blown away, and I played from what I played. I played totally different. You made me play different from, I don't know. You unlocked things in me, and yeah, man, I'll never forget it. I'll never
Well,
forget it.
it was funny. I was sort of thinking you as the leader
Woo!
of, of that kind of feeling. I really enjoyed it.
Mm.
Because especially I wouldn't have expected that from Christoph's. I wasn't expecting what I heard.
Hmm.
You know.
Well, I
So
hope we get another chance.
I
I think
sincere.
tomorrow would have been another gig for us in the
Right.
book. We would
Yeah.
have played in Vienna, I think. So
Oh,
let's
that would have
see.
been nice.
Let's see when we get another chance, even to hang out. But this has been so great to talk to you, man, and thanks for making the time.
Well, I look forward to it, man.
Yeah, me too.
Right.
And yeah, thanks for sharing your stories and your wisdom.
Thank you for your interest.
Sure, sure, man.
All right.
Okay, man. Let's keep in touch and speak soon. Okay.
Okay, of course. And say
Okay.
hello to everybody for me.
I
You're
will.
a bass player and you're a drummer too.
Yeah, I
I
will.
know.
I will. I will.
All right.
Hey,
See you,
take
man.
care, man.